About now, the owner of the livery stables, retired livery colonel, gave a dance for the officers from local British and Canadian units. We were detailed to play for the dancing. British officers are possibly the world's worst ballroom dancers. One or two of the more daring ones would wag one finger in the air as they went trucking on down. First signs of repressed inhibitions came in the Paul Jones. As they circled the ladies, they would do a few jolly Scottish whoops. Next they would do what I call the cocking of the legs, which I will describe later. The dance was held at Robin's Post, in a large and comfortable country-style lounge. Chairs and sofas clad in loose floral covers, plenty of polished wood, a few Hercules Brabbers and watercolours on the walls, standard lamps with silk shades, a few oriental curios, traces of visits to foreign climes. What are foreign climes? Waiter, a pound of foreign climes, please. As the guests eased themselves in, we were playing lively tunes. Woodchopper's Ball, Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree, Ma and Mr. Apple Pie, Honeysuckle Rose, Undecided, Tangerines. What memories these tunes bring back. Soon the floor was crowded. Drinks for the band were arriving at a steady rate. Major Chaterjack, MC-DSO, came over to see that we were being looked after. He really was a great soldier. I, for one, would have followed him anywhere, preferably away from the war. He was this kind of man. An autumn morning. The early sun had melted the night frost, leaving glistening damp trees. The battery parading. Small wafts of steam were appearing from men's mouths and nostrils. The muster roll is called. BSM is about to report to Major Chaterjack. Battery all correct and present, sir. The roar of a plane mixed with cannon shells all over the place. An ME-109 rooftop, red propeller boss, panic. Battery is one man into the ditch. Not Major Chaterjack, MC-DSO. Stands alone in the road, unmoved, produces a silver cigarette case and lights up a cigarette. He is smoking luxuriously as we all sheepishly rise from what was now feels like the gutter. He addresses us. Very good. You realise what you did was the right thing and I the wrong. What can you say to a bloke like that? Interval time at the dance. We ditch our instruments and wander into the garden for a leak. Finding a bush, we ease springs. These were accompanied by the usual Poston blasts, each one greeted with cries of good luck, fall out the officers, drink up, or mine's a Guinness. As eyes became accustomed to the dark, I was horrified. But 5 feet from us in a garden seat was Lieutenant Goldsmith and a lady. As we slunk away, he called out, "Thank you, gentlemen. And what time is the next performance?" This was too much. We broke into uncontrollable laughter, and once started we couldn't stop. The time we got to the house, I was holding my sides with pain. On entering, we saw a huge, fat woman seated at the drums, making a bloody fool of herself. This finished me off. The dance restarted. Without warning, a Canadian officer poured a beer into the bell of my saxophone. Yes, I also played that. Which he thought was funny. I threw the contents on his jacket, something that he didn't think was funny. He grabbed the saxophone, and I stopped playing. "Let go," I said. "This is a solo instrument." Our host came over. The Canadian was told that it wasn't the done thing. The dance continued, and we, rather I, got drunker. Time now for what I told you was the leg cocking. This is an English officer's gyration. The man assumes the position for a Highland reel, and then at the sound of a 2/4 or 6/8 tempo, he raises his right leg and leaps all over the room with one hand up in the air and one on his hip. We played Highland Laddie, and at once the floor became a mass of leaping twits, all yelling and leaping in unison. "Okay!" they screamed. This is where the fight started. One of the batmen serving drinks had his tray knocked flying all over a Mrs. Hendricks. Captain Hendricks hit someone. Someone else hit him. This became popular. The room became a melee of fisticuffs and gentlemen. "Somebody stop them!" shrieked Mrs. Hendricks as somebody floored her. Our host rushed up. "Quick, play a waltz." We launched into Moonlight Madonna. Someone hit Major Chaterjack, MC-DSO. His batman laid out the offender, then carried Major Chaterjack, MC-DSO, to safety. To help it all along, Doug Kidgel threw an occasional cream cake into the arena. The addition of confectionery to the struggling mass made exotic pictures. A red-faced major, his balding head supporting a chocolate eclair, hit a Canadian sporting a jam-covered ear. Kidgel's masterpiece was a large, circular, cream-topped cake that struck the back of a long officer's head. For moments he stood like Greco's Christ ascending, until a loping right felled him. The cake was picked up by a foot, which trotted all over a chest, then passed it on to a neck. In a short time, Cream, jam and treacle were liberally distributed on the uniforms of His Majesty's officers. Strawberry flan up the front of the jacket, apple strudel on the lower face, plus little bobs of cream on the epaulets was something we found difficult to salute. Someone covered in lemon curd was hit backwards through an open window. Our host, his head split open, suddenly appeared rising cross-eyed and smiling above the mess. "Molly!" he shouted, and disappeared again. The news from Moscow was good. Major Chaterjack, MC, DSO, had recovered enough to come on again, and was rendered unconscious for the second time. He was immediately trodden underfoot. His baton grabbed his ankles and pulled him from the carnage, a seraphic smile on his face. There seemed no sign of the fight abating, so we played God Save the King and packed our gear. There was a lot of booze left in the kitchen. We drank it. Legend has it I slid to the floor, first calling for my mother or a priest. To make matters worse, the band truck didn't arrive, so Edgington and Files dragged me along between them, with Kidgel walking behind making remarks. The billet was 1.5 miles away. But after a while, the gunners Edgington and Files dropped Gunner Milligan in a ditch and said, "Sod it." They sat a while smoking, and Driver Kidgel said, I'll go and phone for a truck. An hour later, the battery water wagon arrived. It was 2 in the morning, and I was starting to surface enough to notice that all the dragging had removed the soles from my boots. There was only enough room for 3 in the cabin, so Edgington and I sat astride the water tank on the back and drove through the black silent streets of Hailsham shouting, "Night soil! Night soil!" Thank God there wasn't any.